The night the storm hit, Daniel Mercer was counting grocery money at the kitchen table while his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, colored raindrops that looked like blue jelly beans. Wind pressed against the windows like a tired animal. On the porch, something scraped once, twice, then stopped. Daniel paused, one hand on the neat stack of bills, the other on Lily's hair. The porch light flicked on with a click that sounded too loud in the small house. When he opened the door, rain slashed across his face, and there, clutching a backpack as if it were a life raft, stood an 18-year-old girl who had run out of places to go. "Please," she said, her lips chattering, a bruise purpling along her jaw. "I don't want to be a problem. I just need a place to be tonight." Daniel's life had been a private rhythm of morning lunches, after-school math sheets, and the soft hum of bedtime stories, survivable and small. But he had once promised himself that the good they had left would never grow smaller because of fear. He took a breath, met the girl's eyes, and made a decision that would test his courage, his past, and the fragile balance of the home he'd built from ruins. What happened next would challenge every assumption about kindness, responsibility, and the way a bruised heart learns to trust. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll see how a house that had room for two made space for one more, and how all three learned that shelter isn't just a roof. It's a promise. Her name was Ava. She said it as if the syllables might splinter in her mouth. She hovered at the threshold, refusing to cross the line between rain and light until Daniel stepped back and opened the door wider, a gesture that had nothing to do with square footage and everything to do with invitation. Lily leaned around her father's leg, her eyes large and curious. "I'm Daniel," he said, placing his body gently between his daughter and the dripping stranger. "This is Lily. You're safe here. For tonight." Ava's shoulders slumped, not relief exactly, but the softest let-go a person can manage when they've been holding themselves together with willpower and string. She stepped inside, leaving a puddle that spread like a dark flower on the mat. Lily disappeared and reappeared with a fluffy towel that looked like a cloud dipped in sunlight. "For you," Lily announced. "Dad says towels are hugs that you can wash." Ava's mouth tilted. It didn't become a smile, but the room felt a few degrees warmer. Daniel sent Lily to fetch a spare pair of sweatpants from the clean laundry basket, gray, with Mercer Soccer stamped on the thigh, and a faded navy sweatshirt. He handed both to Ava and pointed toward the hallway bathroom. "You can change there. Take your time." He waited until the bathroom door clicked shut before turning to Lily. "Bedtime story in 10, he whispered. "We'll read 2 chapters. 2. Lily gasped. "2, he said, and she lit up like a small lamp. And laid it over Ava's knees. He tucked Lily into bed, read 2 chapters with all the voices, and turned off the lamp. When he returned to the living room, Ava was staring at the ceiling, lips moving slightly. Counting cracks, he guessed, like someone trying to add up reasons to run or stay. He stood in the doorway, so she could see him come and go. Trust, he knew, was built with visible steps. He said good night, then sat at the kitchen table, filling out a sub-form for the high school. The schedule was tight, money tighter. But something in him, something old and stubborn and shaped like Hannah's hand on his shoulder, refused to measure kindness in units he could spare. Morning built itself out of ordinary things, cereal bowls, the whisper of hair being braided, the clatter of lunchbox latches. Ava folded the blanket into a crisp square and hovered near the counter like an apology that had learned to walk. When Lily said, "Do you like strawberry jam or grape?" Ava blinked, as if the question were a bright light. "Strawberry," she answered, trying the word on her tongue. Lily grinned and made a third sandwich. At school drop-off, Lily squeezed Ava's hand as if they were already part of a shared story. After, in the quiet of the car, Ava stared out at a line of gray clouds snagging on the low hills. "I can call the shelter," Daniel offered. "And the school counselor. We can look into options. I don't want you to feel stuck or obligated." "I don't," she said quickly. I need to finish school. If I can keep my job at the diner, I can cover a little for food. I know how to juggle shifts and homework. I've been doing it since." She stopped, looked at her hands. "I'll clean. I'll be quiet. I just need 2 months." Daniel examined the map of his life: early mornings, subbing 3 days a week, tutoring 2 evenings, Lily's piano on Wednesdays, and the never-ending math of bills versus everything. The map had been drawn in pencil, erasable and smudged. It could hold a new line. 2 months, he said. And we make a plan. But we do this right. They stopped by the school. He introduced himself to the counselor, a woman with smart eyes and a cardigan full of stitched flowers that had seen too many tears. Paperwork, appointments, an emergency contact form that felt like a quiet revolution when Ava wrote "Daniel Mercer" in the blank. They also called the local hotline to document the situation. Daniel knew that transparency was its own kind of protection, for him, for Lily, and for the girl who had arrived in the rain. The first week was choreography. Ava's shifts at the diner were lunch and late evening. She took the couch, left the bathroom tidy, wrote a thank you note and then another because the first felt insufficient. She refolded the blanket 3 times before bed as if she could fold herself into smallness. Still, small kindnesses began to accumulate like interest. Lily drew an extra sun on Ava's napkin. Daniel showed her how to fix the. When Ava returned, hair towel wrapped, clothes too big but clean, Daniel offered the sofa and a steaming mug of ginger tea. He didn't ask questions immediately. People who arrive in storms don't need interrogations, they need a steady horizon. They sat in the soft hum of rain and appliances. Eventually, as if she were paying for shelter with pieces of truth, Ava began to speak. Her stepfather had arrived when she was 10. He came with a smile that never reached his eyes and rules that did. Her mother loved the idea of a protector. Ava learned to flinch from the execution. It had been mostly words and doors slammed too hard, until last month when mostly shifted. She had tried to finish senior year clean, invisible, and intact. But invisibility isn't a plan, it's a hope. The day she turned 18, her stepfather said the house had 2 adults now, and one of them was extra. There were bags on the porch. Her mother's eyes were glassy with tears she never let fall. Her stepfather's hands were steady in the way lava is. "I didn't know where to go," Ava finished, staring at the steam from her mug. "I kept thinking, if I could just get to graduation, I'd figure it out. But graduation is 2 months away and I don't think I can." The sentence fell apart, all jagged edges and wet silence. Daniel felt an ache under his ribs he recognized from old nights when grief came to sit on the couch uninvited. 3 years earlier, a black car and a blue uniformed man had handed him a folded fact: his wife, Hannah, wasn't coming home. A delivery truck, a blind curve, and a phone call that broke the house in half. He had been both drowning and parent, both crater and shore. He knew the look of someone walking along the thin ice of, "I'll be fine," with a storm under the surface. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "We'll figure out tomorrow." Ava's eyes flicked to Lily's closed bedroom door. "I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want anyone to think." She stopped, flushing. "I mean, you don't even know me." "I know you're cold and you ask for help," Daniel said gently. "And I know what you're afraid of. I have rules." He spoke them calmly, the way you put seat belts across small bodies without making it sound like prison. "You sleep on the couch. The bathroom is shared, knock first. Doors stay open unless someone's changing. If you need to leave early, you wake me. And if anything makes you uncomfortable, you tell me and you can go, no hard feelings." Ava nodded. A single tear escaped, the sort of tear people cry when their bodies are still unsure if it's permitted. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll look for work tomorrow. I'll pay you back." He didn't say, "You don't need to. People are allowed their dignity." Instead, he said, let's get you a blanket that doesn't smell like the family dog. He found the thick wool one that Hannah had loved for fall movie nights and hesitated a fraction of a second. Love isn't a limited currency, he reminded himself. Temperamental kitchen drawer with a hip bump and a muttered, "There you go." Ava washed dishes even when it was someone else's turn and learned that in this house, nobody owed more than they could carry. But good deeds don't travel alone, they attract questions and shadows. The first shadow took the shape of a phone call from Ava's mother. Ava stood very straight in the corner of the kitchen, knuckles white around the cell. Daniel busied himself chopping carrots he didn't need, letting the conversation exist without his shape pressing on it. He heard fragments, "I'm safe." "No, he isn't like that." "Mom, please." Then silence, then the kind of strangled sound someone makes when they are trying not to break. Ava hung up. She stared at the turned-off phone like it had declared a war and left the battlefield. She asked, "If you're trying to take advantage," Ava said, words stiff with humiliation and expectation. She said men who play hero just want debt later. The room felt brittle, like a glass that had fallen and somehow hadn't shattered yet. Daniel put the knife down deliberately, palms flat on the counter. "I'm sorry she said that," he replied. "I understand why she might be afraid. Some people are cruel. That's why we have our house rules. That's why we have the counselor looped in. You didn't come here for me. You came here to have a safe place to sleep. That's still the point." She nodded, but her eyes had a storm moving through them. He wanted to fix it, the way he fixed loose hinges and homework errors. Some things can't be fixed, only honored. He slid a glass of water toward her, and they returned to their small ordinary tasks. Sometimes mercy looks like chopped carrots and a glass of water. The second shadow had sharper teeth, a rumor at school. People like stories that don't belong to them. It turned out that a girl sleeping on a widower's couch was the kind of story that made tongues buzz. Gold digger, home wrecker, how do you wreck a home already wrecked by grief, looking for a daddy? Ava kept her head down, but one afternoon she didn't make it to the car. Daniel found her in the bathroom, leaning over the sink, scrubbing her hands as if the soap could erase a whisper. "They think I'm trash," she said without looking up. "Maybe I am. You're 18 years old and you've survived more than some adults I know," Daniel replied. "Trash doesn't get up for work at 6 and bring home blisters and A-minuses. Trash doesn't make extra coffee so someone else can sleep another 15 minutes. He took a breath, gentled his tone. "You are not what people say about you when they're bored. What if they're right?" Her voice had the quiet terror of someone who has learned to preempt insult by agreeing with it first. "They aren't," he said. "But even if you make mistakes, and you will, you're still allowed to be human and learn. That's not trash. That's all of us." Ava didn't cry, but some tension drained from her shoulders. "Why are you like this?" she asked after a moment. "Kind, I mean. People aren't like this." He thought of Hannah's laugh, the way it used to ricochet through the kitchen on Pancake Saturdays. He thought of the paramedic who had handed him a cup of water when his hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the neighbor who mowed his lawn without being asked for the first 2 months. "Because people were like this to me," he answered. "Because someone has to go first, or else nobody goes at all." They developed a ritual. When the days were too heavy, they'd sit on the back steps and say one thing they could still believe. Lily's were simple, "Tomorrow has waffles." Sparrows don't care if I miss a piano note. Daniel's were ordinary miracles, "The porch light still works." The car started. Ava struggled at first, defaulting to jokes, then settled into a language of quiet bravery. "I know the diner's menu by heart. I turned in the English paper on time. The bruise is yellow now." On Thursday of the second week, Child Protective Services came by, routine, given the report Daniel had made and the unusual arrangement. The social worker's eyes were kind. She walked the small house with a practiced gaze, took notes, confirmed the rules, spoke privately with Ava. She asked Lily if she felt safe. Lily answered with the authority of 8.5 years, "This house has a kindness rule. Dad made it. It's stricter than math." When the social worker left, she scribbled her number on a card for Ava. "You can call anytime," she said. "No one loses points for needing help." That night, the rain started again, gentle now, as if the sky had decided to practice kindness, too. By the third week, the house had a new rhythm. It took practice, the way you learn to carry a tray, balanced, hands steady, eyes ahead. Ava woke early, left sticky notes on the fridge about milk and permission slips, and taped her diner schedule above the calendar where Lily drew stars on the good days. Daniel picked up an extra tutoring shift and began saying, "we," about things that used to be, "I." But storms don't end just because you found the rhythm of the rain. The next one arrived in the form of Ava's stepfather idling his truck at the far end of the diner parking lot, engine purring like an animal thinking about teeth. Ava spotted him through the front windows, the same way a deer spots the idea of a wolf. She asked to take her break early and stepped outside with her back straight. He didn't get out, just cracked the window. "Playing house with a widower," he sneered. "Figures. You always liked pity. I taught you something at least, how to land on your feet." Ava's cheeks flushed with shame that didn't belong to her. "I'm finishing school," she said, each word a held plank in a flood. "I have a place to sleep. I have a job." "You've got nothing that isn't mine," he said. "Your mother wants you home." Home. The word tasted like. When Ava returned, hair towel wrapped, clothes too big but clean, Daniel offered the sofa and a steaming mug of ginger tea. He didn't ask questions immediately. People who arrive in storms don't need interrogations, they need a steady horizon. They sat in the soft hum of rain and appliances. Eventually, as if she were paying for shelter with pieces of truth, Ava began to speak. Her stepfather had arrived when she was 10. He came with a smile that never reached his eyes and rules that did. Her mother loved the idea of a protector. Ava learned to flinch from the execution. It had been mostly words and doors slammed too hard, until last month when mostly shifted. She had tried to finish senior year clean, invisible, and intact. But invisibility isn't a plan, it's a hope. The day she turned 18, her stepfather said the house had 2 adults now, and one of them was extra. There were bags on the porch. Her mother's eyes were glassy with tears she never let fall. Her stepfather's hands were steady in the way lava is. "I didn't know where to go," Ava finished, staring at the steam from her mug. "I kept thinking, if I could just get to graduation, I'd figure it out. But graduation is 2 months away and I don't think I can." The sentence fell apart, all jagged edges and wet silence. Daniel felt an ache under his ribs he recognized from old nights when grief came to sit on the couch uninvited. 3 years earlier, a black car and a blue uniformed man had handed him a folded fact: his wife, Hannah, wasn't coming home. A delivery truck, a blind curve, and a phone call that broke the house in half. He had been both drowning and parent, both crater and shore. He knew the look of someone walking along the thin ice of, "I'll be fine," with a storm under the surface. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "We'll figure out tomorrow." Ava's eyes flicked to Lily's closed bedroom door. "I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want anyone to think." She stopped, flushing. "I mean, you don't even know me." "I know you're cold and you ask for help," Daniel said gently. "And I know what you're afraid of. I have rules." He spoke them calmly, the way you put seat belts across small bodies without making it sound like prison. "You sleep on the couch. The bathroom is shared, knock first. Doors stay open unless someone's changing. If you need to leave early, you wake me. And if anything makes you uncomfortable, you tell me and you can go, no hard feelings." Ava nodded. A single tear escaped, the sort of tear people cry when their bodies are still unsure if it's permitted. "Thank you," she whispered. I'll look for work tomorrow. I'll pay you back. He didn't say, you don't need to. People are allowed their dignity. Instead, he said, let's get you a blanket that doesn't smell like the family dog. He found the thick wool one that Hannah had loved for fall movie nights and hesitated a fraction of a second. Love isn't a limited currency, he reminded himself. Choices. We do, Daniel said, and walked back to the sidelines, where Lily waved furiously with both hands, as if joy itself required extras. Days stacked like plates. Some wobbled. Ava's grades held. She discovered she was good at balancing trays and surprisingly fierce with cups of coffee, protective in a way that startled her. You deserve hot coffee, she'd say cheerfully when refilling mugs for the retired men who came in at 6 and called everyone kiddo, in a way that felt more like affection than erasure. She saved the tips in a jar with a torn label, grad shoes. Daniel offered to cover them. She said she wanted to buy something herself that she didn't have to apologize for wanting. At home, Lily brought Ava into the rituals with the zeal of a child expanding her universe. We clap after spelling tests, she announced. Even if no one's here. Applause scares away mistakes. On Friday nights they scrubbed the kitchen to Hannah's old playlist, which had everything from Motown to 90s pop. It felt sometimes like a séance and sometimes like a celebration. Then, because even good stories carry sharp edges, came the misunderstanding that almost sent it all crashing. It began with a broken vase, one of the few things of Hannah's that Lily believed had magic woven into it because her mother had loved it so fiercely. Ava bumped the shelf while wrestling the vacuum back into the closet. The vase fell, shattered in a sound that seemed too loud for such a small house. Ava froze. Panic rose, old and ravenous. In her childhood home, this would have been a catastrophe with consequences that bloomed more bruises than apologies. Her body made a decision before her brain did, run. She grabbed her backpack, left a note that said I'm sorry, I caused damage everywhere, and slipped out the back door like a ghost. Lily found the note. She carried it to her father, eyes wide and glossy. Did I do something? She asked, voice small. Daniel felt fear swallow his stomach whole. He called Ava, it went to voicemail. He texted. Nothing. He told Lily to put on her shoes, speed, but not alarm, and they drove routes that made sense and some that didn't. The diner. The school. The little overlook facing the skeletal trees where teenagers etched their initials into the guardrail with borrowed keys. They found her at the bus station, sitting on a bench under the flicker of a fluorescent light that buzzed as if it were anxious, too. Ava, Daniel called, relief and worry making a mess of his throat. She stood, shoulders bunched like she was bracing for a wave. I broke it. I know it was hers. I keep breaking things I love or that belong to people who are kind to me. I thought leaving quickly would be kinder. Lily marched forward with all the ceremonial seriousness a child can muster and placed her small hand in Ava's. We break stuff all the time, she declared. Once Daddy broke a whole shelf. It was loud. I cried. Then we ate ice cream because it was Tuesday. We break stuff all the time, she declared. Once Daddy broke a whole shelf. It was loud. I cried. Then we ate ice cream because it was Tuesday. We can glue the vase. If we can't, we'll call it a story. Daniel exhaled. Running doesn't keep people safe, he said, voice gentle but firm. It keeps them guessing. I'd rather you stay and let us be mad or sad with you, if we need to be, than vanish and leave a hole. We do not throw away people for breaking a thing. We can fix a thing. People are harder to find. Ava's face twisted as the rules of this house slammed against the rules etched into her bones. Then something gave way. She sat back down on the bench and cried without hiding, silent, shaking tears that had been waiting for a place to fall. Daniel sat a respectful space away. Lily leaned her head on Ava's shoulder. The fluorescent light settled into a steady hum, as if it had made a decision, too. They went home. They swept the shining blue shards into a shoebox and labeled it, Hannah's C, because it glittered like one. They did eat ice cream because it was Tuesday. Then Daniel opened a drawer and took out something he had not been ready to touch, Hannah's letter to him, written when Lily was born, the one he used to unfold on nights when grief felt like a locked room. He read a piece out loud, not the whole thing, because some things you keep, but enough. If this house ever loses me, he read, voice careful and steady, remember, fill it with whatever we have more of than fear. Ava listened like you listened to a song you needed without knowing it existed. Later, she fell asleep on the couch with the shoebox on the coffee table like a tiny ocean holding little blue moons. Graduation grew out of those days. The school auditorium smelled like dust and dreams. Ava wore a thrift store dress and the grad shoes bought from her tip jar. The caps bobbed on nervous heads. The principal's speech attempted wisdom and mostly achieved length. When Ava's name was called, she walked as if every step might be fragile and found it wasn't. She scanned the crowd for two people and found them instantly, Lily standing on her seat, clapping as if trying to move the air, and Daniel with tears he didn't bother to hide. After, in the parking lot, the world was a kaleidoscope of flowers, selfies, and proud shouting. Ava's mother approached, small in her careful clothes. She looked tired, as if she'd been holding a heavy bag in her heart for years. The stepfather hovered behind her, predatory presence wrapped in politeness. I'm proud of you, her mother said, eyes sliding to the ground, then up. I am. Things are complicated. Complicated is a word people use when they don't want to admit something is broken, Ava answered softly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look at the man behind her mother. I can have love for you and still keep my distance. I can wish you well and still not go back. Her mother's chin trembled. He says. What he says about me isn't me, Ava said. And what he says about Daniel is a lie. He is decent. He set rules. He made calls. He kept the light on. Her voice gentled. You could leave, too. If you want. You could call the number the social worker gave you. Something flickered in her mother's eyes, fear first, then the faintest outline of longing. She looked at the stepfather, back at Ava, then away. I can't, she whispered, but it sounded less like a truth and more like a habit. Ava nodded, swallowed the grief of recognizing someone else's cage. I hope one day you can, she said. I'll pick up if you call. They didn't have a party with 20 friends. They had a picnic in the backyard with Lily's cardboard crown and a cake that listed to one side but tasted like Saturdays. The three of them took a photo, Daniel's arm around Lily, Lily's arm around Ava, Ava's expression astonished and steady. In the weeks that followed, the house became a different kind of shelter. Not a temporary harbor, not a guilt payment, but a place where choices grew. Ava enrolled at the community college part-time. The diner offered a schedule that let her take 2 classes. Daniel co-signed the lease on a small studio a few blocks away, not because he wanted her gone, but because helping someone build their own door is a different kind of love. On the day she got the keys, Lily ran through the empty room narrating grand plans. Your couch will go here, your books here, your window plants here, and I will go here every Saturday except when I have soccer. Ava laughed. You're all the furniture I need. The night before Ava moved, they sat on the back steps again. The sky held that magenta line right before the dark. Crickets tuned their instruments. I worry I did the wrong thing sometimes, Daniel admitted. Not because of you, but because the world can be cruel. I worry I made us a target. Ava looked at him, eyes clear. You did the right thing. It didn't fix the world. But it fixed a night. And then a week. And then a life enough that I could start fixing it, too. Will you visit? Lily called from the kitchen where she was throwing spoons in a drawer that would never close properly again. Every Tuesday, Ava called back, because it had become their day. Even when we don't break anything. They laughed. Then they were quiet, the good kind. Here is the part one promised if you stayed: shelter is a roof, yes. But it is also a habit. It is the decision to answer the door with a steady voice and a set of rules that make room for dignity. It is the phone numbers you keep in your wallet, the transparency you practice even when no one is watching, the way you let people tell the truth at their own speed. It is the insistence that one broken thing does not break a person. In a world that values grand gestures, shelter is often small and repeated: a towel offered, a schedule shifted, a light left on. Months later, on a different rainy evening, someone scraped across the porch again, just a neighbor's cat, it turned out. Still, when Daniel opened the door and found only damp air and quiet steps, he left the porch light on a little longer than usual. Not because he expected anyone. Because someone had done that for him once, and he had learned that the glow itself can be prayer enough. As for Ava, if you passed her at the diner now, you might not know this story. You'd see a young woman pouring coffee and quizzing herself on sociology terms from a stack of index cards. You'd notice the shoes that still looked new because she wiped them off after walking through puddles. You might see, on her wrist, a thin bracelet that says, "More than fear." You wouldn't know how close she came to believing she was the weather that ruined every room. But you'd feel something steady near her, like the knowledge that even if the storm comes again, there are places in this world where the porch light is left on, and the first rule is still the kind one. What happened next? They kept going. They made more meals than plans, more plans than excuses. They disappointed the cynical and surprised the tired. They stayed brave in small, ordinary ways. That is, after all, how most miracles arrive, looking suspiciously like Tuesday.